Barroth and Barioth. Before I begin, I just want to let you guys know that obviously the setup is a little bit different than what it used to be. I just moved out of my family home, and I kind of have to scrap together a new setup. So just bear with me while I still reconfigure this new setup. It hopefully won't look this bad next time. But anyway, let's begin. Today is another double feature: the Landslide Wyvern Barroth and the Ice Tusk Wyvern Barioth. Two very different monsters with very similar names. Seriously, like, what was Capcom thinking here? Both of these kind of mid-tier monsters are fan-favorite designs despite not being flagships, and I felt it was about time I did something that wasn't a flagship. As always, the instructions and parts list for both of these models are available on my Patreon under the second tier membership, alongside their subspecies. So for Barroth, we also have the Jade Barroth, and then for Barioth, we also have the Sand Barioth and the Frostfang Barioth from Iceborne. All my instructions come with a file that automatically builds a shopping cart of the pieces you need to build this monster through the #1 LEGO resale website, bricklink.com. There will be some slight differences between the physical models in this video compared to what you see in the instructions and what the final instructions build is. However, the final instructions build is always the best version of the model and is the ideal version of the model that I want to make for you guys. Please excuse the poor camera because I'm using my phone this time. Let's talk about Barroth first. The Barroth model takes influence from the concept art and the original model from Monster Hunter Tri, namely for the brighter tone on the sides of the body. This model doesn't come with anything to represent the mud that would, show up on his body when you fight him. However, it would be very easily to just add some dark tan pieces to the model in order to make it look muddy. I think it'd be very easy for any of you to do that. As for Barioth, it takes influence from the 5th gen iterations. I liked how much fluffier Barioth looked in World and Rise, so I modeled after that design. The shell plates along the back were particularly difficult to create with LEGO, but I'm pretty satisfied with the final result. How do you guys like the turntable thing? I'm probably gonna change it up and make it look better in future videos. So, sorry this video is such a test run of sorts. Now time to do a size comparison. As always, I'm gonna bring in my trusty LEGO minifigure and a random Bionicle, just for size comparison. So for LEGO minifigures, they're correct. The sizing is pretty correct. I feel Barroth might be a bit too big compared to the Hunter minifigure. However, Barioth is perfectly sized, and you'll see that in World and Rise how big the Barioth is. As for large-scale action figures like this Bionicle, they scale pretty well. They're maybe a little bit small, but I think it would fit in really nice on a shelf alongside some large-scale action figures. Now let's compare it to a Rathalos. Compared to Rathalos, Barioth is the appropriate size. All my flying wyverns I try to keep at a relative constant with their sizing. Barroth does look a bit smaller in comparison, but I think overall he's the right size. I really wanted Barroth to be a smaller build overall. It was a goal of mine to keep the parts count low on Barroth. I know a lot of my builds use a lot of parts, especially the flagships, and I felt that Barroth was on sort of the same level as Golbul or Royal Luderoth in terms of popularity, so I wanted to make sure the parts count was lower, so that there's more incentive for you guys to buy, the mid-tier, non-flagship monsters. Because I think that they're all beautiful, the designs that I have, but also just the monsters in general. They are beautiful monsters, and I know Capcom will never make figures of especially Barroth and Barioth. Capcom's never going to make figures of these, maybe Barioth, but a fully posable action figure of Barroth is just never going to happen. Speaking of posability, let's get to that. Barioth shares the same build and techniques that my Nargacuga has, as well as my Tigrex. The only difference is that Barioth is much heavier than Nargacuga and thicker, so his tail can't stay up like Nargacuga's can. Thankfully, Barioth isn't much of a flyer, because the model doesn't really accommodate that very much. My Barroth model, on the other hand, shares a lot of the same posability of most of my other Brute Wyverns, just on a smaller scale. I feel that Barroth is overall easier to play with, like my other Brute Wyverns, because Brute Wyverns are just easier to play with overall. Flying Wyverns, I find, are a bit all over the place, and they're just difficult to play with. Overall, I'm happy with both of these builds, and I think that they illustrate my ability to create complex shapes with LEGO. Both the Barroth and Barioth models have quite fragile heads. The rest of the body is relatively sturdy on both models, and they hold their shape if you play with them relatively okay. The only real weak point, like super weak point, is on the Barioth's torso, where the shell attaches to the body. The whole section pops off if you're not careful. Otherwise, I was able to play with these models pretty easily. It was actually very rewarding to build both of these models, and I hope you all enjoy building it too with my instructions packs. And now I want to quickly give my thoughts on Barroth and Barioth from the actual games. And I have a lot to say, so strap in. Barroth is a completely fine monster that does exactly what he needs to do. Monster Hunter Tri revitalized the combat gameplay of the series, and Barroth is a good example of how they reconceptualized older concepts into a fresh, more engaging fight. Barroth has armor like Beriorosu, but the armor doesn't bounce your weapon, keeping you in the fight. Instead, the armor is the mud. Barroth also hides in the ground like Beriorosu, but is more actively pursuing you instead of just staying put. Barroth is fully designed to work in tandem with the Sandy Plains map. Something I really enjoy about the main series design philosophy is how they design the monsters and the maps to function together, in conjunction, like they really belong to one another. Barroth really feels like he belongs in the Sandy Plains and the Wildspire Waste. Not so much the other deserts in Generations, though. Overall, I really like Barroth as an engaging, low-level monster that teaches the mechanics like monster defense, and how to deal with a Brute Wyvern moveset. Now, as for Barioth, look guys, I really want to like Barioth. And I do, design-wise. Barioth looks so cool. He feels perfect next to the other Monster Hunter Wyverns and monsters, and really feels like he belongs. I really enjoyed how threatening he was back in Monster Hunter Tri, and he was one of the few monsters I truly feared when I first played the game in my early hunting days. So then why do I have a problem with Barioth? What is my problem with Barioth? Basically, my issue comes from his niche as a monster. He's supposed to be a tundra Arctic hunting wyvern, but they already established the nomadic Tigrex as a dominator in these regions. Barioth uses many of Nargacuga's attacks, and when Nargacuga was brought back in Portable 3rd and then Monster 3 Ultimate, there was a struggle to make Barioth look unique when placed next to Nargacuga. And even today, there's still a struggle to make him stand out compared to his cousins Nargacuga and Tigrex, which both are generally more favored by the community over Barioth. The only thing that really makes Barioth special is his ice-based breath attacks, where he summons a tornado by shooting out a liquid out of his mouth or something, which seems like something an Elder Dragon would do, like Kashela Diora. Again, he's filling in for another monster. When he's not being Tigrex or Nargacuga or Kashela Diora, what is Barioth supposed to be? I feel they only gave him a breath attack because they needed a monster in Monster Hunter Tri that would drop materials to forge ice weapons, because they didn't have one otherwise. They just wanted an ice monster. My overall philosophy and preference in Monsters in Monster Hunter is simple. If the attacks feel like magic, then it should only belong to an Elder Dragon. And I feel that Barioth's breath attacks are too magical for his level as just being a regular flying wyvern. I feel like it's a stretch to have Barioth have a whole blizzard in his belly. I just think about it like this: why would Barioth ever need that ability? Why would he ever need to freeze his prey when teeth and claws are extremely effective? They actually might be more effective killing weapons, especially when his prey, the Popo, are already designed to be resistant to the cold. And again, that's just my opinion. And I know it doesn't bother most other fans. I'm in the minority with this strange opinion that I just don't think Barioth needs ice attacks. I feel that Legiana is a better ice-focused ice wyvern overall, and I wish that Barioth didn't have ice powers and instead use like physical snow in his attacks. But yeah, that's just my weird opinions as usual, and you can complain below. As always, the instructions for both these models, plus their variants and subspecies, are available on my Patreon under the second tier membership. Thank you for watching, everybody. Special thanks to my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. It means so much to me, and it's helping me really get by. With that said, I'm going to show you guys what we're doing next. After Nargacuga and Barioth, there's only one more pseudo-wyvern left to go. That's right, Tigrex. Next time